Welcome to the second Spartacus webinar by Divante, the Spartacus update webinar. We are back after short break, short summer break, and today we will focus mostly on the recent Spartacus release, which is 4.0, but more precisely 4.1, which was released the day before yesterday. I'm not used to, or I don't like to to introduce myself, but I've heard that it's a good manner to introduce before you start talking. So what you need to know about me is that I'm technology evangelist and Spartacus trainer at Divante, and that's because I like learning new things. So I'm trying to be ahead of any news in Spartacus world, and then I like to share this knowledge further. So that's why I'm a trainer, and that's why we are organizing this webinar. So you actually might treat me as Spartacus Knowledge Hub because I know people who are developing Spartacus actively, and actually I've been working kind of a lot with Spartacus. I'm working with Spartacus since version 1.0, so it's already 2 years. So throughout this time I've gained some experience, which I'm eager to share. But straight to the topic of this meeting. Let's have a look at the agenda. It's quite short. This rather be a short meeting, but simply update or sync meeting like. But we'll start with talking what's new in Spartacus 4.0 and actually 4.1. But the 4.1 release is so fresh that I haven't had time to update my slides here yet. But for the newcomers to the Spartacus world, I'll briefly introduce what is Spartacus actually. Then I'll give you a few tips on how to approach creation of new project with 4.0, because there are some, I wouldn't say issues, but some things you've got to know. Then if you are already working with Spartacus and with some previous version, I'll guide you on give you some tips on how to upgrade to 4.0, because this is not as simple as it used to be, but for reasonable reasons. So I'll explain that later. And then I'll tell you about the new training programs that I'm working on. You might be interested, and I'm actually actively working on that. So I'm looking forward for your contribution. So if you have any ideas or requests for what this training should contain, then I would appreciate your feedback very much. And in the end, we'll have the longest part of the whole meeting, which is a Q&A session. So I'm looking forward for your question, and we will use this click meeting feature of gathering questions. So I'll start the Q&A right now. So yeah, it's started already. So now on chat you can type your questions and end it with question mark, and this will be added to the question poll. Then in the end, I'll be picking questions from this pool, and I'll be answering that. This is quite a nice feature because you can ask questions meanwhile I'm talking without interrupting me, and you won't forget the question, and I'll be able to give you the answer in the end. So let's start with the real content. So before we talk about what's new in Spartacus 4.0, let's have a short look on what actually is Spartacus. It's very difficult to frame what is Spartacus in one sentence, but I tried hard, and I hope this this definition will help you. It's basically a set of Angular libraries that allow rapid PWA development for SAP Commerce. It's sometimes I name Spartacus as a framework for building storefront. Whatever you call it, it's basically a set of libraries that enable you to build PWA storefront fast for SAP Commerce. It's dedicated to SAP Commerce, and incorporates a lot of built-in features like OCC connectivity. So these are the things that you don't have to, when you're working with Spartacus, you don't have to bother much. How to wrap the data transfer between SAP Commerce Cloud and your Angular application. It also consists of UI component library, so from banners to menu card to organization management component and so on. And these components are fully customizable, so they give you a jump start into implementation. Also, a big part of Spartacus is the CMS integration, also including Smart Edit and etc. So this is something that you wouldn't be probably able to achieve in a timely fashion with some custom development. And additionally, Spartacus is also a kind of sample or starter storefront. So after installing Spartacus, you can see your storefront running in like 5 minutes, and then you can just modify the look and feel and move on from that point. You don't have to start from a blank page. And here is a little architectural diagram that I've drawn. So basically, as mentioned previously, Spartacus-based storefront is just an Angular app that is using Spartacus libraries, multiple libraries, because Spartacus is split into multiple libraries because of performance reasons, because you can nicely pick. This is kind of this is a part of composable commerce paradigm, so you can pick what do you want from Spartacus to in your application, and not install the things that you don't need. And as you can see, this Angular app lives outside of SAP Commerce Cloud. Of course, it can be deployed to SAP Cloud and live along the SAP Commerce, but it's not a must because this is a decoupled application. In contrary to what accelerator storefronts were, they were tied together into SAP Commerce, and Spartacus is simply communicates via OCC REST API, and this renders a lot of benefits, which are, for example, scalability and easier development process, because of you can have very specialized teams taking care of their profession, and so on and so forth. Of course, there is the learning curve is a little bit steeper for some, so this is some kind of a drawback, but I'm offering you actually the trainings, so I hope that they are helpful. Okay, so that's in short about what is Spartacus. So let's move on to what's new in Spartacus. So on September 14th, the new version 4.1 was released, and what it actually included. One of the big changes is that it integrates SAP digital payments. Before that, Spartacus did not actually offer any specific payment method. It was only card or on account in the B2B. So usually in the implementations, you had to do some custom implementation if you want to integrate with Adyen or whatever. Now you have the SAP SAP digital payments, which is a separate product of SAP, but it's kind of a standard product for integrating with payments. Another feature introduced in 4.1 is long-awaited quick order feature. So this is more for B2B, and for those who don't know that B2B, it's basically that you can add products to cart based solely on their code. So this speeds up the purchase process. The 4.1 version also adds B2B inventory display, so you can not only see whether the product is in stock, but how many pieces are in stock. It also includes some authentication improvements. This is some more low level. This is not a user-facing feature, but of course, authentication is important. And another under the hood feature is some SSR optimization. I don't want to get too deep into technical details. You can read that in the documentation. But before talking about version 4.1, I was quickly updating the slides because this was released like 2 days ago. So I should have talked about 4.0 first. But let's move on like this. So the biggest change in 4.0 is that it it upgraded the Angular version underlying, because the previous the previous the previous Spartacus version 3 was using Angular 10, so it's like two versions up. And this clearly is a performance and security, as performance and security improvements. We in many projects we've already worked with Angular 12, and there is a tremendous increase in development experience because of the compile time. Another feature that was introduced in 4.0, it was display of prices for attribute values in the CPQ, so configurable products integration. But the biggest change was actually code cleanup and removal of deprecated code, because the Spartacus core team needed to do some internal changes in Spartacus to enable them to move further faster. So this 4.0 does not bring many user-facing features, but in return, the next minor versions should come more often and with more features. And of course, the other benefit of code cleanup is that the bundle size decreases. Another thing introduced in 4.0 is what I've already related to what I've already talked about, is the composable commerce. That the checkout previously was the part of the core library and the storefront library, so of the big two libraries. Now the checkout is moved to a separate library, and because of that, first of all, you can lazy load the checkout module, which boosts up the performance, speeds up the loading time of of your application, and because when user enters your homepage, you actually don't have to download all the code related to the checkout, because this will be only needed when the user moves to the checkout page. And at the same time, if you have totally custom checkout flow, then you can opt out from this library and decrease your bundle size. But at the same time, these lazy loaded libraries tend to be problematic, so you need to know how to work with them. There was a tiny user added. There was a tiny user-facing feature added, which is cloning option when restoring saved card. So previously, the saved card feature was introduced, but now you can have a cloning. You can clone a saved card. And in the end, this is not very important feature, because the core team added new storefront theme, because before you had one Spartacus theme. Now you have additional theme. Usually in the implementation projects, you are not using these built-in themes, because you either extend them because you are building your own storefront, and the clients are usually willing to have their own experience, they own look and feel. But this introduction of the storefront theme is more for previewing some other features, like having a look at an example how to create your own custom theme, and how theme selection works in Spartacus. Okay, so that's about the new features in Spartacus. So let's have a look how to use the Spartacus 4.0. And what tips I can give you if you are starting the new project with 4.0. Angular in version 12, they've introduced so-called strict mode by default. And that's because they've made some analysis based on the Angular CLI telemetry, that most of the project created with Angular CLI are using strict mode. So most of the projects in the whole world, maybe not the whole world. I haven't checked actually the data source here. You have link to the blog, to the blog, to the Angular blog where this was announced. But basically, they've done this analysis and they've seen that people actually opt in for the strict mode, so they enabled it by default. And this is actually a good thing because strict mode is a good practice. It leads to better code quality, but it enforces uh, more more limitations on the developers. So basically, the strict mode enables stricter type checking in TypeScript, and also strict templates, strict Angular templates, and stricter budget limits. So this will lead that developers will get some errors more often, and the linter and the build mechanism will give them warnings more often that they should improve their code, which is a good thing. The problem with Spartacus is that so far it only supports it partially. That's because this is a big project and they haven't enabled that in all the Spartacus libraries yet. Some newer libraries already support that, and they have also added some features to make it make this work easier. But I've tried it, and it is sometimes really cumbersome to work with Spartacus using this strict mode. Personally, if I would be working on that, I would use that. But if you have less experienced developers, that might be really blocking and demotivating for them. So it is basically your decision whether you want to enable or disable this strict mode. At the same time, I've talked with Spartacus core team, and they are aware of this problem, and they are really looking forward for some issues that you can file on their GitHub, that there is something there is something blocking you from working with Angular strict mode. So now I can show you a few tips what you can resort if you want to go with the strict mode. Is that you can do some typecasting, and in TypeScript file is quite simple. You just define a variable and then say as some specific type, or as any if you want to resort to that type. But in templates, this is not so well known. There is a special function which is $any, and this casts this to any type, and then you can pass it further, because in Spartacus itself, when it does not support the strict mode yet, type checker will say that some types are incompatible, whereas they actually are, but the type definition is not that strict. Another thing that Spartacus gives you is type guards, which are simply functions that not only check whether the the object is undefined or nullable, but cast it to the explicit type, which is not undefined and not null. I don't want to dive too deep into technicalities today. This is because of the use of TypeScript. Okay, let's move on. I see questions popping up in the Q&A, and I'm really glad. This a little bit distracts me, so I'll hide the chat and I'll answer the questions in the end. Okay, let's move on to the upgrade. And what I can tell you, in Divante, we've been doing, we've done some. Since the release of 4.0, we've done upgrade to 4.0 in 3 projects, and I can tell you that this time, usually the updates from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3 were very slight or smooth, I should say. But this time it might be a little more painful than usual. I'm not saying it's not doable, and I bet it's a lot easier than in the accelerator world. But compared to the previous versions, it's a little bit more problematic because of the removal of the deprecated code and a lot of code changes which had to be implemented in order to move further with the implementation. So how to approach this upgrade? First of all, you have to migrate to reference app structure. The reference app structure, this is the standard Spartacus application structure which was introduced in Spartacus version 3.1, is if I remember correctly. So if you've created your project in like version 2.0 and haven't migrated to the reference app structure yet, so that's the first thing you have to do. Uh, After migrating, you have to, of course, thoroughly testing if you have done it right. It's not a big task. It's just moving your modules to some other modules and structuring them well. It also helps improving the quality of your application. But you can actually you can make some mistakes while moving modules around. So make sure that you have thoroughly tested that. The next thing to do is to update Angular, and there's Angular schematic for updating Angular, but here you can also face some problems that the Angular schematic might yell at you that, okay, but you are using some Spartacus libraries in version 3, which are incompatible with Angular version 12. So to amend that, you have to use force flag when updating Angular. After that, you have to use schematics to update Spartacus as well to the newest version. And after this steps, you will get schematics will add some to-dos in your code, which you will be supposed to resolve the. So, for example, some deprecated methods will be marked, and so on, and all changes that might be breaking will be marked in your code. So you have to move through that and fix these issues. And afterwards, you of course have to test it thoroughly if everything went well. If you get any issues, then simply ask for help. You can contact me, or you can also reach out on Spartacus public Slack, because the core team is also aware of this, that this is a big update, and they are looking for the feedback. To see whether the schematics haven't missed any things, and so they will really appreciate your feedback on the upgrade. More about this upgrade you can read in the documentation. There is a very detailed guide, and there is a huge list of technical changes which will help you understand what to do. And of course, the good thing is that Spartacus is open source, so you can find all the changes in the code that you can read, and this really helps. So moving on to the trainings, to the new training programs. I think that most of you know that their Divante is providing Spartacus training, but for those who don't know, Agnieszka will post on chat the link to our standard Spartacus training offer. And now, as I said, I'm working on 2 additional training programs. And I appreciate your feedback on that. What you would actually expect from such trainings. First of all, during lots of trainings that I've provided, this Spartacus standard trainings, I've seen that there are a lot of developers willing to learn Spartacus, but they don't actually have Angular background. That's usually because they are Spring developers developing the accelerator-based applications, or they are used to some other front-end framework, and so on and so forth. And that seemed to be a blocker for them. So I tend to send pre-work materials where I link some free and also paid Angular courses, which are very good, but they cover like Angular thoroughly. And in my custom Angular training, I really want to focus on the prerequisites for Spartacus, because Spartacus, to learn Spartacus, it requires some more advanced knowledge of Angular in some places, but in some places it doesn't even, for example, then you don't need to have much knowledge about routing in Angular because Spartacus takes this burden off you. So some things from Angular are more important for Spartacus, some not. Uh, so so this is my proposition of the training. It takes 3 weeks, but it's not like continuously every day for 3 weeks. It's like around 6 sessions spread around 3 weeks, because this is a online course, and you have time to digest the knowledge and do the homework. I really focus on the practical exercises that you can do to check whether you've learned the given topic properly. Another course or training, I should say, that I've prepared is Advanced Spartacus training. As mentioned, we provide standard Spartacus training, which is a prerequisite for this one. And this Advanced Spartacus training has a completely, maybe not complete, but a little bit different formula. Here, it's more of a project walkthrough, or maybe not even project walkthrough. It's just a sample project implementation where we are implementing some storefront together. And I guide you on that, how to do this with best practices. And we add some custom features like third-party CMS integration, the development approach, how to mock things, how to improve your development process using Spartacus, how to optimize performance of the build application throughout, and many more things. And that depends actually on the group, what the group would basically request, whether it's testing or more on PWA features and things like that. And this training is solely for developers that are after standard Spartacus training. So I know that these are people who know what is Spartacus and the basics of the Spartacus, and they are ready for implementing some project using Spartacus. So that's all about my trainings. And now we are moving to the Q&A session. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll move on to the Q&A panel. Okay. My camera is covering the question list. Okay, I see a lot of questions. That's great. Okay, the first question, can you describe process of B2B quick ordering? I think that the picture is worth 1,000 words. So I would direct you to the documentation, where there is a link to SAP Commerce documentation, where you can see actually some screenshots. But not to give you leave you without the question, is basically that on the cart page, you have a little input where you put the product code, the quantity, and add to cart. So you quickly can, if you know the product codes, then you can quickly add the product to cart without going to the product page and clicking the add to cart button. You simply add the products by adding you simply add products to cart by typing in their codes. Okay, next question. So can we short the process, simplify checkout process in Spartacus side? I think that you mean about like single page checkout or things like that. Well, this is fully customizable. So far as I remember, the out of the box you have the stepped checkout, because this is this is somehow influenced by the flow that is supported by the hybrids. So you have to first set some delivery address, billing information, and so on and so forth, and review and confirm order. But in one of the recent projects, we have actually implemented the single page checkout, and this is not really a big deal. Next question. What is strict mode? I would direct you to the Angular documentation because they explain this better than me. But basically, Angular strict mode enables stricter flags in TypeScript. In TypeScript checking, this is one thing. So, for example, there are stricter null checks. So and undefined. So you cannot have non-explicit undefined variables. There is also a stricter object the types compatibility type checking and things like that in TypeScript. The second thing is the Angular strict settings, which primarily are the template type checking. Without it, you can actually because in the Angular templates you can put some code and pass the variables to inputs to some other components. And without the strict templates, the types are not checked in the templates. With the strict mode, it is being checked. So when passing an input, Angular is checking whether you're passing the input to the component with the proper type. And additionally, this is regarding the build. It's changing the budgets, the bundle budget, so to some smaller sizes. So it's easier to grow over this budget, and the build process will yield an issue that that your bundle size is too big. So this is in short what a strict mode in Angular is. Okay, and once again, question about single page checkout. Uh, I haven't checked that, but as I've answered previously, this is rather not supported so far. But basically, these are few components, so you could have some wrapping components adding this altogether. It's not difficult to implement it yourself, but Spartacus does not support it on its own. Or let me quickly check it because I want to be sure. Maybe they've added it and that slipped my mind. Uh, there is an express checkout. Okay, there is an express checkout feature, but this is something different. This just skips the steps. If you have some default payment method and default address set, this just skips these steps and goes to the next step. But this is not a single page step checkout, unfortunately. Next question. Can you describe how Spartacus team managed to lazy load libraries since this is not natively supported in Angular? This is a very interesting and broad topic. You can have a look actually in the Spartacus source code because this is very like to say very top-notch engineering there. I've read that, but this also may seem quite complex. Uh, but to give you a short answer, they've created their own mechanism for triggering the lazy loading of Angular modules, and these modules may be triggered by two things. First of all, there is a CMS component that is mapped inside of this module, and in the configuration outside of this module, we say that this module has mapping for this component. So this is basically just some string of the type code of the given component, and when the given component is meant to be rendered, Spartacus loads the module and knows how to render it. Additional thing is that this lazy loaded modules can also have some services, and this is also done in a way that there are some facade services which are like dummy services, And when they are requested, they are maybe not dummy. It's like a proxy service, which loads the module when the real service is actually needed. Uh, so this is this is a bird's eye overview of how it's being done. But if you are really into computer engineering and this like hardcore code, then I encourage you to read that, because this is a very solid knowledge base of doing very advanced things in Angular. Which payment gateways we can use? So I think that because of SAP digital payments, you can use a lot. This is a separate product, which honestly I'm not an expert of, but they promote this product as a like this. This middleware between the payment the gateways and your application. So your application, your front end application, and hybrids communicate only with SAP digital payments, and this product is responsible for communicating and wrapping the communication with different payment gateways. So I would direct you to the documentation of SAP digital payments. Oh, that's a that's a good question. Question mark. I believe it's added after some message. So let me. Uh, Okay. So there was a question. This relates to the question in the chat. A little more details on reference app structure. I am new here to Spartacus. So basically, if you are new, then then this is not so complex for you. It's just when you install Spartacus, it creates a folder structure for you. So there is a Spartacus module, which imports Spartacus configuration module and Spartacus features module, and it creates also a features folder where the Spartacus features go in. Um, this is something that I explain a little bit further in my Spartacus standard training. Uh, but this is also described in the documentation, and this is something that appears when you install a Spartacus, so you can investigate it on your own. Okay, and the next question is, what SAP Commerce version is required for Spartacus 3.x? So basically, there is no like mapping which version of Spartacus support, which Spartacus version requires which SAP Commerce version, because it's more feature wise, because we have this decoupled architecture, or we can say that microservice architecture. So some features, to enable some features, you need to have higher version of SAP Commerce, and for some features lower. I'll send you a link to the documentation where you have this this list. So where was it? Yes, there is a feature compatibility matrix, and here you can find out for which feature, which version of Spartacus. And okay, but this I've sent you the wrong link. Sorry, this is for two-way. There's a similar page. Yes, the second link is okay. Delete it. So, for example, to support like B2B commerce organization, you have to have Commerce Cloud in the version at least 2005. And let me see if there's okay. So for SAP digital payment integration, you need to have 2011 or 2105. So this is, I think, the highest requirement here here on the list. Is this relating to some previous question about the, let me see, the lazy loading? Yes. I don't know if I get the question here right. The lazy loading library. Um, Here, I've said that it's lazy loading of a module, and previously I said that the library, basically, Spartacus library has on the top. It's basically a module which has some sub modules. So you basically lazy load that, and because of this is also a library, you can, if you don't want to load it at all, you just don't have to install it. I hope this makes this clear. Okay. Can Spartacus support both B2B and B2C store on same instance like SAP Commerce CX Accelerator do? Uh, Currently not. There on the roadmap, there was such a feature to implement this. So currently it's not supported. Uh, from my experience, I don't see a big problem with that. You can easily implement that using some customizations, or you can wait for this feature to be available. Um, to be available. Um, there is also a question whether whether you want to actually do that, because maybe you can scale your application horizontally and have like you could have the single code base, but different builds for B2C and B2B, and deploy them to separate to separate to some separate separate servers. So this way you would have like the traffic going to B2B would go to a different server, and that would render some performance gains. Uh, Basically, the problem of running B2B and B2C on the same instance is because of the configuration. So B2C and B2B has some contrary configuration, and you cannot use them both at the same time. Um, so this is the that's the thing. Next question. Will there be any out-of-the-box scripts which will help the front-end developers to migrate to the version 4.0 as easy as possible? And what obstacles the developers possible may met during this migration? Uh, okay, so you already have the scripts. These are called the schematics, and uh, you just run ng update at Spartacus schematics, and this runs this script for the updates. And basically the script goes through your code and checks for the deprecations and for some changes which might be breaking, and shows you hints where your code has to be amended. Um, but because of there were many breaking changes in the in Spartacus source code, I haven't found it yet, but there might be some things that the schematics don't take into account and might miss a few places. And yeah, the Spartacus core team is looking for the feedback, and they are willing to update the schematics as soon as possible to make this migration easier. Uh, the maybe this is not maybe this is related, but there's no script for migrating to reference app structure, because this is basically impossible to to do with a script. So this is something that you have to do manually, but after you are in the reference app structure, then the schematics should be able to handle the migration. Okay. Will the documentation be improved? Its current state is not perfect, especially part that related to ways of overloading, excluding, customizing the extending functionality. I'm not the part of SAP and I'm not a part of core team. I actually know the guys from the core team, uh, but I'm not working on development of Spartacus. I'm just teaching Spartacus, and I'm more on the implementation part. So I don't know. I cannot answer this question. I agree that some part of the documentation is not so good. um, but some places are actually quite good. There are some new, the documentation of new features is quite nice. But at the same time, I read that this is like they are documenting only features, not they are not focusing or like the development process of new features or extending customization. And I don't want to be a person, but my Spartacus training is filling this gap. In this training, I'm focusing on Spartacus customization and extension. Um, yeah, so unfortunately, I would hope that they actually improve the documentation. But developers like to develop, not write documentation. Okay, what is difference between providing custom configuration and import of versus providers? Uh, I've read some line in the documentation. There's basically there's practically there is no difference. It's technically a smaller difference that you have to import also a module, not a function. It has rather a semantic difference, or basically I cannot say what's actually the difference. It's more of what flavor of syntax you prefer. Currently, I see the tendency of moving to providers, and this is more readable, more functional, and yeah, this is what I prefer. But let me check. There is also there is actually such a explanation in the documentation, so I'll send you a link. Yeah, so here's the link. So here you can read what they write in the documentation, but this means that there's not much difference. Okay. Next question. We have two questions left. Certification available as part of your training of Divante. Um, So let me start with with some other topic that I don't believe in certificates. That's because in the end, your knowledge as a developer counts. Uh, the, I see that the industry is waving away from the certificates because usually it's the certificates. It's easy to pass some test for the certification, but this doesn't mean that you are actually a good developer and you will do the job right. Uh, but at the same time, after if there is such a request, I can give you a certificate, but this is not like SAP certificate. This is just certified by Divante that I've provided you the UI training, and I can certify that you've attended my training, and you've finished this training. So if you really need that, that's no problem of, of giving this. But what actually counts is your knowledge and your skills. What is the cost of the training? So we basically provide corporate trainings, and the price is given upon request. So you can go to the page that Agnieszka will paste link to the chat. Then you'll find the contact form and contact us via the form, and we'll give you the price. Okay, another. No, we don't We don't do individual trainings. We focus on corporate trainings. Um, that's simply because I want to train the whole teams, and we actually haven't had a lot of requests for the individual trainings. Um, so if you really would like to have an individual training, you can contact us. If more people appear, then maybe we will open such a training. But usually this doesn't happen, so we don't have as many people to make this uh, this training possible. Can SAP CDC be integrated with Spartacus? Yes, there is actually additional Spartacus library for the CDC integration. Thank you for attending. Thank you for a lot of insightful questions. I like answering them, and I'm looking forward for your feedback, especially regarding the new training programs. And also, if you would like to know something more about Spartacus, what would you like to see on the next webinar, and so on and so forth. So you can send me an email or find me on Spartacus public Slack. So thank you, and have a great rest of the day.